You know, the sad part really is I don't even know where to start, y'all. I know I ain't been here. I know it's been a little bit. I've had a lot going on personally between, and I don't know if y'all know this, but yeah, I'm getting a divorce. King Bajan and I are no longer together. I'm happy. I don't know if he is. Not my problem, not my concern. But yeah, I wasn't really ready to tell y'all that in the last episode, but we here now. I got a lot of shit to talk about when it comes to this nasty ass nigga Joe Budden. So, I don't really have notes for this episode. I really was just in the shower thinking about and processing all the stuff that I have encountered regarding him just from the past, 48 hours alone between Rory and Mal and then this young lady named Olivia Dope. I really don't have no words for Joe. I don't have no words for Joe except for you a bitch ass, nasty ass nigga. Reading tweets on the timeline right now of people calling Joe a predator and saying he's trash and shit like that. And, I agree. I 100% agree. I think what would be really important first for me to do is to pull up her tweets. Actually, do I want to start with Mal or do I want to start with her, y'all? This is a real, yeah, because we're going to talk about these bitches too. All right, y'all. What's up? My heart's a little heavy right now. I'm not going to hold you because we're going to jump into this Joe Budden and Rory and Mal situation. I think we should start there. My feelings regarding him are very clear, concise, and plain. I think he's nasty. I think he's a narcissistic asshole. I think he's selfish. I think he's a horrible business person. I think he's an abuser. Think of like all the negative words. And this is not, oh, H hates Joe Budden. No, I have a strong disregard and dislike and disdain for this nigga because he's abhorrent. Like, at this point, if you're supporting him, you nasty. That's really just how I see it. Mama, sister, brother, auntie, uncle, baby daddy, cousin, whoever. You just a nasty ass person at this point, and you don't care about the protection of black women especially. But we gonna get to that, because we gonna talk about what Miss Olivia Dope pulled out this morning in regards to Joe, with visual receipts, by the way. You can go back and watch these episodes that she's referencing as well, which is absolutely baffling to me. But let's start with Rory and Mal. So Rory and Mal, is it Mal? I don't know. Long story short, I've never really been a super huge fan of the Joe Budden podcast. I don't know their ins and outs. I don't know really how they maneuver around each other. I was never a fan because I've never really been a fan of Joe Budden. Like, after Pump It Up, he had no purpose in my life, and that was as a child. So he didn't do it for me. He don't do it for me. I don't understand the appeal of him, but whatever. Rory and Mal, as you guys probably already know, were his co-hosts on the Joe Budden podcast. Now, they went on a hiatus for like 6 weeks or some shit, and everybody was kind of unclear on what was happening. They really weren't speaking much during that hiatus. They were kind of just taking a step back. There was some tension prior to the hiatus, from what I understand, on the episodes. Go listen to them if you want the backstory. That's not what we're talking about today. Next thing you know, Joe comes out and he comes back from the vacation. Next thing you know, Joe comes back from the vacation, right? And Rory and Mal don't return from the vacation. So apparently they took 6 weeks, from what I understand. From what I understand, they took 6 weeks. After they took the 6 weeks, they were supposed to come back. but they did not come back. I think there was another vacation in between there for the actual employees to get some time off, but they did not come back to the podcast. Joe starts talking shit, starts being really disrespectful. Things come out about how he's been speaking to Rory and Mal. He puts out a podcast episode basically saying them niggas are fired, fuck them, and all this other kind of BS. So me being me, at this point, I do want to know what's going on, but from Rory and Mal's side. Because from my perspective, Joe ain't shit and ain't been shit. The nigga be jacking off his fucking dogs. If you don't believe me, put it in Twitter. You'll find it. He be doing weird shit. He was abusive towards Sin Santana, his, I think, ex-fiance. She done ran off with the baby because that nigga is so fucking insane. His interpersonal relationships don't add up positively enough for me to have hope that whoever says something negative about him, it's wrong. I have zero faith in Joe Budden. Like none. And here's the proof as to why. Rory and Mal do this podcast episode by themselves where they wanted to clear the air and tell the truth as to what was going on. A lot of the speculation on Twitter was that Rory and Mal were employees of the Joe Budden podcast, right? Which means that any grievances or issues they had regarding the profits of the Joe Budden podcast were pretty much null and void because as an employee, you don't get to see the books and the bills and all that other kind of ish. This is so frustrating. This is why I want to go home. Anyway, moving forward, when Rory and Mal put out their response to Joe's flagrant ass podcast episode that released, I want to say if not a week ago, almost a week ago, they made it very clear. We were not employees of the Joe Budden podcast. We were profit partners. Now, for those of you who don't understand what the hell a profit partner is, because I low-key kind of didn't at first, that means we are owed, as Rory and Mal, as co-hosts of the Joe Budden podcast, we are owed equity of every single penny that comes into this podcast. So let's just say, for instance, let's just use an example. Snickers wants to come and do a commercial on the Joe Budden podcast, right? They want to do an ad placement. If that ad placement ends up being, let's just say $1,500. I know they was making way more money, y'all. Just follow the example. If that podcast was making $1,500 and let's say Rory and Mal said, you know what, we're going to split this shit 3 ways with Joe. That means each one of them should be getting $500. Now, again, I do not think it was a 3-way equal split. I do not expect it to be a 3-way equal split. I'm using that for the purpose of using an example, basically, right? When you are a profit partner, that means since your equity is coming from the profit that comes in, what do you need to look at and what do you need to have access to in order to see what you make? If a nigga come to me and say I'm a profit partner and say, yeah, it was $5,000 that we made in total, your portion is $350, I'm not trusting that nigga. Show me the numbers. Period the fuck, poo. Show me the numbers. I'm not going to sit here and trust your word on what it was. So that segues into what Rory and Mal state happened, right? According to them, Joe started getting real evil, real mean, real disrespectful when the talks of the money and the numbers and we need to see the numbers and we need to see the audit start coming up. To the point Rory brought in his lawyer to ask Joe's lawyer for that information. He unfortunately never received it, right? There was also another situation Rory and Mal brought up where $400,000 went MIA from the podcast account. It just kind of disappeared. They did not state whether or not that situation was rectified. They did not state whether or not Joe accounted for that money in any kind of way. They were very clear that neither one of them were accusing Joe of stealing money, but he moving funny with his money, which is how they lost the podcast. Well, how he lost the podcast with them. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. After hearing the whole thing, I listened to it twice. There's a certain level of accountability that I do feel Rory and Mal should have had on their side. I'm not victim blaming because Joe Budden ain't shit. But I want to get this part out the way so it's really fucking clear how I feel about Joe Budden without interference from either side, whether it be Mal and Rory or Olivia. So let's talk about Rory and Mal real quick. Because the level of accountability that should have been there from the beginning, I understand that's your nigga. I understand you doing that shit off the love. I understand you doing that shit because you want to see your nigga win. But that's one thing about seeing a nigga win is do they want to see you win? You know what I mean? Joe Budden is not a I want to see you win ass nigga. Every single dealing he's ever had for the most part has ended what? Bad. Every single one. Every single fucking one. And they go through it on Twitter in detail in this thread that I found. If you want me to link you to the thread, let me know. But they went through every single like business dealing that Joe has had. Now, that's number one. Number two, fuck his previous business dealing. Excuse me. Fuck that. Let's look at the fact that you're doing business. I love my friends to death. Every single one of them. Some of y'all are listening to this podcast episode. What's not gonna happen is full explicit communication regarding payment or contracts that we may enter into for business. I'm real small time. I'm not making profit off of my content yet. But if it's one thing I just learned from Rory and Mal, you need to make sure your paperwork in order. Because one thing that Rory also said that stood out is he is fronting the bill for the accountant. How you fronting the bill for an accountant that you don't even have access to? Like, make it make sense. That don't make sense to me. And again, I get it. You doing it for the love. You doing it with your homie. But friends and business don't mix unless the business is right. Because now the friendships are over. Mal's never probably going to talk to this nigga again. If Rory do, that's his white business. But I know a real nigga when I see a real nigga. And y'all make a lot of jokes about Mal on the timeline and shit like that. But one thing I'm not going to say is that nigga didn't stand 10 toes fuck down. I will also admit my homeboy Jonesy, shout out to him, made a very valid point. Them niggas sat there through these episodes and didn't say shit. And that is something that I am seeing a repeat like effort or lack of effort in defending yourself in the moment. I don't know. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not the most biggest, baddest, brash person ever. But I ain't no bitch either. And I'm not going to let you manhandle me in no moment. I'm just not. I'm going to speak up for myself. I'm going to tell you that you're wrong. So it doesn't make sense to me because a lot of the stuff that Rory and Mal were saying happened in like 2019, 2020, all the way until this point. They've been having these issues. Why are you still showing up for work? I understand, like, you know, enough is enough and you got fans, but as a fan of many different, like, podcasts now, I started to get into them. I know when I first started, I hated podcasts, y'all, but bitch, I be listening now. But as a fan of many different podcasts, my number one priority will be honesty to my fans. I'm not happy here. The episodes are going down and we not showing up to work because what? We're not happy here. We don't want to lie to y'all. Excuse me. We don't want to be mean. We don't want to be disrespectful. We're not trying to take away from a great experience that y'all may have every single week. But I'm not going to let you just talk to me or man me. And that's not towards them. That's not towards Mal and Rory because I do understand it. I just don't agree with the mindset of keeping the peace at your own expense. I don't agree with keeping the peace at your own expense at all. At the fuck all. All these two men were asking for was access to see the profits that they were sharing. It's really that simple. And y'all sat on that timeline after Joe spoke. And yeah, I'm saying y'all because there's a lot of y'all that's probably listening. And I seen your fucking tweets being mad disrespectful to Rory and Mal because Joe gets on his podcast and says, yeah, these niggas had the nerve to want to see the books. I'm not showing you no books, being mad disrespectful. And y'all like, these niggas is employees. Which, let's segue into that. You niggas want to be oppressors. Like, can we sit in that? You niggas want to be oppressors. And the reason why I say you niggas want to be oppressors is because every time a negative situation happens on Twitter where somebody rich or somebody influential, or somebody that has a little pull, or you think they got a big dick, or they your big bro, or the big unk, come forward and they say some fucked up shit, y'all want to play devil's advocate and say, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. Well, maybe it ain't. Maybe they are just as shitty as they're presenting. Maybe you don't need to cape or cap for them because now you look stupid too. Maybe you look just as bad as they do. You sit here capping for celebrities, bro. These niggas suck. And they proven to you that they suck. To other celebrities, Rory and Mal is known. They get millions of listeners every week. And you think your little nimble, fickle, I fucking pull $20, $23 an hour ass, and that's not to knock your hustle, because your hustle is your hustle, but you really think that you would be moving the same way as Joe Budden in situations like this? If you do, that's fucking disgusting, and you need to go look at yourself. I'm really hoping that you go look at yourself, because that's bad. That's bad for business. That's really bad for business, number one. Number two, why do you want to be an oppressor so bad? Like, sit with yourself. I sit with myself in the shower. That's my favorite place to sit with myself, be accountable, review my day, reflect on if I said some messed up shit, reflect on if I hurt anybody's feelings. And that's not to like overanalyze or like be, so caring or so needy, but I care enough about the way that I affect people. This nigga Joe don't give a fuck about how he affect people. If I fuck you over, I fuck you over, I fuck you over, and you can suck my dick in the process. That's not how you handle people in life. That's why that nigga gonna die old and lonely. Joe Budden is not going to have any substantial relationships in his life that are not familial. Like, his blood family probably gonna rock with him after this, and that's like it. And I'd be shocked if some of them niggas did too, because alright, anyway. But like, for real, like, how do you just navigate life in this way of like, suck my dick pussy, however I treat you is how I treat you, right? Okay. I don't understand. I don't want to understand. Let's jump into the second person that has come forward about Joe Budden this week. This actually took place this morning. Today's Monday, May 17th when I'm recording this. I'm trying to get it out today. And I'm going to give y'all some bullet points. Somebody was nice enough to kind of itemize what happened on this other podcast, right? So, there's this other podcast called STTI, which I'm going to be honest, I'm going to have to look up what it stands for. But there's a young lady that used to host on there with two other little bitches, which I'm going to call them out in a second. But the young lady's name is Olivia Dope. I watched her whole Instagram post. The girl is obviously traumatized by what the fuck she endured with Joe Budden. It seems like it was a separate podcast that he was just kind of guest starring on because it was about to be under the Joe Budden network or the like Joe Budden umbrella. So she shared her experiences on an episode of this new podcast when Joe was there. She did not know Joe. She didn't really have any rapport with him of any kind, which in my opinion, that doesn't matter, but she makes that very clear. Joe repeatedly is telling this girl that he wants to fuck her while they're recording. Now, these parts did end up getting edited out of the episode, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. Joe also said that she was carrying the show because the other two women were not dressing sexy enough. It really made it uncomfortable for her, and it fostered a competitive work environment because one of the co-hosts started shutting down every topic that Olivia brought to the table, started being catty with her. She even shared like her group chat messages with Joe about how uncomfortable she was and things of that nature. One of her co-hosts, which we're assuming is Mandy, was the one that was reporting back to Joe about what Olivia was saying in the group chat. So during the actual podcast episode, he kind of made a pass at her on a break. And he was like, well, I'm going to hug you on camera so we can lighten the mood, which that's a weird thing to plan if there's no reason to lighten the mood, but whatever. She goes to hug this man, and this is a clip on Twitter. This will all be on Black Podcast page. I'm going to be retweeting and posting all of this for y'all to see because I'm not just blowing hot shit. This shit really happened. She gives this man a hug on camera, right? After she went back and rewatched the footage, she realized Joe was like gyrating or did like this little humpy hip thrust towards her that made her stupid uncomfortable. She didn't even know it was happening because she had distanced her body, which you can also see in the clip. So she was really, really mortified, is what she said, because she was being objectified. And the fact that it's, of course, going to live forever on the internet. She went and she really didn't handle anything in the moment. She did verbally say, I'm uncomfortable, while Mandy and this other bitch were talking over her, like actively talking over her, right? She tells them that she's uncomfortable live on air, and that's kind of the extent of what happened regarding her, like, standing up for herself in that moment, right? Afterwards, this was 3 months ago. So today she posts a video on her Instagram basically stating, this is why I left. This is why I was uncomfortable. This is why the podcast did not succeed, etc., etc., etc. My co-host started acting funny, and a bunch of other, like, I don't even want to say allegations, stories of her experience being on this podcast of all females with Joe Budden. So this nigga's nasty, is what I'm getting. He made passes at her, telling her that he wanted to fuck her, like we just discussed. He also let her know that she was the hot one on the podcast. Like, this nigga's out of line. This nigga's out of line. And how people continue to support him, how he continues to have money funneled into him. What is it? I asked Twitter earlier, is this nigga's dick made out of orange creamsicle? Like, what the fuck is it with this nigga that y'all love him so much? I don't get it. And I'm predominantly talking to men, because a lot of women checked out on Joe Budden a long time ago. But a lot of men still rock with this nigga. And I can't conceptualize it. Are y'all so desperate for a quote unquote voice that no matter how toxic or disrespectful the nigga is, or how much of a violator the nigga is, it don't matter, because we need Big Daddy Joe? Why is that? Why is that? Like, the people that I look up to and that I want to mentor me and that I take, like, stock in what they say, they not trash ass people. And if they are trash ass people, and I find out about them being trash ass people, I stop supporting them. I haven't listened to a Kanye song in years. I can't stand listening to Daniel Caesar or R. Kelly. Like, why is your nostalgia or your connection with someone able to outweigh how they affect other people? How people treat people matters. We sit on this timeline and we talk about protect black women, protect black women, protect black women, and Black Lives Matter. This nigga is scamming on a black man. Like, fuck Rory for 2 seconds because he's a white man. It's the Black podcast. Sorry, Rory, take a back seat. Everything you said was valid, but you're not black, so we're not centering you right now. Mal's a black man. As corny, as whack as y'all want to say that nigga is, I respected the fuck out of him for standing his ground. I wish he would have did it on the podcast. Olivia is a black woman. As crazy as she may have felt in the moment to speak up, that's a black woman, bro. Why do we not care until people are in our proximity? We don't give a damn about people being abused until they're in our proximity. We gotta snap out of that. Joe Budden is a real life villain. He's a real life fucking villain. He needs mental help. He needs to be set the fuck down. He needs to lose every endorsement. He needs to lose everything until he comes to the realization this world don't revolve around Joe. But that's the problem. Y'all make him feel like that. Y'all give him that platform. If we consistently ignored this nigga and act like he don't exist and not pay attention to these podcasts going forward, not talking about now, I'm talking about going forward, he won't deplatform this nigga. Y'all gonna keep giving these people that are abusive. I can name several other black people in the industry that have been called out for being abusers, have been called out for being violators, and we still support. We still advocate. We still show up. But let that be your mama. Let that be your sister. Let that be your daughter. Black men, let that be your daughter coming back to you saying, Joe Budden gyrated his hips on me and I was uncomfortable and nobody did nothing. Let your daughter come back and say what Olivia said, which she stated clearly. I was in the editing room with my co-host and we were watching it. And as we were watching it, they seen I was clearly uncomfortable. They seen I was, to the point they called me into the editing room and said, do you want us to edit this out? And unfortunately for Olivia, she wasn't strong enough in the moment, because she then said she's chuckling and she sees everybody else laughing. It is what it is. And something she said that was so sadly profound was she felt like, who am I to stop the fun or to stop the podcast from going forward? Baby girl, you're enough. You're somebody. Like, let's start there. You're somebody. Look, I am in no way, shape, or form a victim blamer. I'm not. I do think Rory and Mal had some accountability they could have had regarding business, because that's business, okay? When it comes to sexual harassment or assault, that girl didn't deserve any of that. That girl didn't deserve any of it. She has no accountability whatsoever to be had. I want to say this, though. Women, our dicks are big. We need to start walking in that. Our clits are big. We need to start walking in that. The fact that this young lady felt like a hypocrite because she had to go tell her daughter and explain to her daughter, you should never make anybody make you feel like that. You should speak up and advocate for yourself, even though I did it, is fucked up. It's fucked up for her to feel that way, because she shouldn't have had to have the strength in that moment to speak up for herself. She shouldn't have had to, had the wherewithal or the balls or the clit to be like, hey, nigga, fuck you. You making me uncomfortable, and make it serious. I understand baby girl didn't want to make it hot. I respect that fully. I'm not that bitch. And what I want to do is use my platform to help other women not be that bitch. Whether you got to carry a gun, whether you got to carry some pepper spray, some mace, let your dick hang when these niggas start violating. And I mean that wholeheartedly, because men of that standard or lack of standard or that lack of caliber really feel like they can do whatever, act however, be whatever. And then in the moment, it goes completely unchecked. This girl has been sitting here for 3 months, traumatized, hurting, and in pain. For 3 months. And this nigga Joe been dicking down bitches, living his life, going to dinners, going on trips. Fuck that. If I'm going to have my day and my life ruined, so are you. And I know there's this stereotype and this trope of like, angry black woman. I don't give a flying fuck about none of that. You know why I don't care about being angry black woman? 1, because I am a black woman. And 2, if I'm pissed off, guess what the fuck I'm going to be? Angry. We have a right to be angry when people violate us. We've sat under this trope of not trying to be the angry black woman. No, I'm walking in that. I'm walking completely in it, because what that does is it negates the fact that we have a right to be angry. We are human beings. When you mistreat us, when you violate us, when you disrespect us, we 100% have the right to be angry on your ass. Whether I beat your ass, whether I cuss you out, whether I ruin your platform, I have 100% right to do that. You know why? Because you could just not be a nasty ass nigga. It's real simple. It's real simple. I was actually going to spend this whole episode talking about Rory and Mal, but more than business, being a sexual harasser is a big deal. Being a bad businessman is one thing. Being bad for business is one thing, because you can bounce back and learn how to do business again. Being a sexual harasser, that's who you are. That's in your blood. And I guarantee she's not the first or only woman that this has happened to. So I'm really going to go ahead and just wrap this episode up. And I'm letting you know again, if you still support Joe Budden after this, you are a nasty ass nigga. You cannot be a supporter of HB from KC and the Black Podcast and a supporter of Joe Budden. That's like oil and water, because we don't stand for the fuck shit on this podcast. And that's even coming from me. I crave the day where y'all are going to have to come and say, H, you didn't handle that right. H, you didn't do that good. Or H, you fucked up. I crave that, because accountability is how we keep tolerance. This nigga Joe Budden has no tolerance for anybody else but himself. Hold people accountable. It needs to happen. I can think of a specific situation with a prominent LGBTQ female in the black community who's a screenwriter, and there was fucking sexual assault on her set, and it was allowed to slide. And that nigga is still doing movies and still acting. And the 2 women got to sit back and go through therapy and seek counseling and go be loved on by their family because they've endured sexual assault. Enough is enough. Blow the fucking lid off this shit. And I know it's intimidating, especially being a young woman who's trying to climb the ladder in media. I've said shit now that's probably going to prevent me from getting certain opportunities. But at the end of the day, I've slept in my car before. I ain't scared to go back. I've slept on a person's couch before. I ain't scared to go back. You cannot get to a point where a dollar sign or how you are perceived by the world means more to you than your dignity. Never. Because you can't get your dignity back post. That shit's out there for baby girl. And I'm sorry, Olivia. It fucking sucks. You can't get your dignity back on that situation. He took your dignity in that moment. Just in that moment. Not forever. But in that moment, that nigga was a bitch towards you. And unfortunately, because of how we are socialized, to just sit back and be the good girl and not cause no stir. Cause a stir, baby. Cause a fucking stir. Because at the end of the day, he's already caused a stir within your spirit. And I'm speaking to every woman out there, or even every person out there, men too, that has somebody disturbing your spirit and you just sitting there taking it. Fuck that. Cause a ruckus. Cause a fucking ruckus. Because you are worth that. You're worth that and more. Fuck Joe Budden forever.